Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the bell's cheery trill signals the entrance of a new visitor, the sun casts a warm, dappled glow through the windows of timeless treasures, its wooden floors and vintage displays exuding charm. Uncertainty shadows a gangly customer as he halts just shy of the threshold, gaze sweeping the eclectic sanctuary, his posture awkward in a mismatched gray suit. Clearing his throat, he utters, "Dress shoes," towards the room, his deep voice spiked with nervousness. Franklin, his name tag reveals, is on a mission for his cousin's wedding. Surveying the cozy confines, his eyes are treated to a visual feast, a curated maze of colorful clothing, vintage jewelry, and pristine accessories, each with a story to tell. He breathes in the shop's aromatic embrace, a welcome escape from the sterile, paper-scented confines of his accounting office. He turned to find a woman in her 60s with silver hair swept into an elegant updo, wearing a vintage teal dress that swished around her calves as she moved. I'm looking for men's shoes," Franklin stammered, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. "For a wedding?" The woman's eyes crinkled with warmth. "Of course, dear, but you kept looking at these beauties." She reached past him and lifted one of the red heels. "Handcrafted in 1956. The craftsmanship is impeccable." Franklin swallowed hard. "They're nice," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I'm Vivian, by the way. This is my shop." She offered her hand, adorned with several vintage rings. "Franklin," he replied, shaking it briefly before returning his hands to his pockets. "Would you like to try them on?" Franklin blinked rapidly. "The men's shoes? Yes, No, darling. These." Vivian held up the red heel again, her expression kind but knowing. "I couldn't possibly." Franklin's heart raced. I'm not. "You know," Vivian said, setting the shoe down and straightening a nearby rack of dresses. "I wasn't always Vivian." Franklin looked at her more closely. Her features were refined, elegant even, but now that she mentioned it, he noticed the breadth of her shoulders beneath the teal dress, the larger hands that wore the vintage rings. 45 years ago, I was Victor," she continued, her voice steady. "And I spent 30 years before that pretending I didn't long to wear beautiful things like these." She gestured to the shoes. "Back then, there wasn't even language for what I felt. Just shame." The tension in Franklin's shoulders eased slightly.
"How did you know?"
The question tumbled out before he could stop it.
"That I was a woman? Oh, honey, I always knew. But how did I know it was time to stop hiding?"
Vivian tilted her head, thoughtful. "It was right here, actually. This store belonged to my aunt. I was helping her inventory stock one weekend, and I kept coming back to a pink cashmere sweater set. She noticed and said, 'You know, nobody's stopping you from trying it on except yourself.'" Franklin's gaze drifted back to the red heels. I don't think I'm... You don't have to be anything, darling. You can just be curious, or appreciative of beautiful things." Vivian's voice lowered. "Or you can be someone who's been denying herself for a very long time. Either way, these shoes aren't going to bite." The word, herself, landed like a key unlocking something deep within Franklin's chest. He'd never allowed anyone to use that pronoun for him, yet it felt like a warm embrace. "What size are your feet?" Vivian asked.
11.
Franklin answered automatically. "Perfect. These are marked as a women's 13. They should fit beautifully." She picked up the heels and handed them to him. "The dressing rooms are in the back, but you're welcome to sit right here if you prefer." Franklin hesitated, clutching the shoes like precious artifacts. "I'll use the dressing room." Vivian nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Take your time." "And Franklin? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or in this case, a single shoe." The dressing room was spacious and private, with a cushioned bench and full-length mirror. Franklin sat down, placing the red heels on the floor in front of him. He stared at them for a long moment, his reflection in the mirror showing a man with disheveled brown hair and tired eyes, wearing a suit that had never quite fit right. With trembling fingers, he untied his brown Oxfords and slipped them off, followed by his black socks. His bare feet looked pale and vulnerable against the patterned carpet. Taking a deep breath, he picked up one of the red heels. The material was soft, yet sturdy, the craftsmanship evident in every stitch. Franklin slid his right foot in, marveling at how perfectly it fit. The T-strap wrapped around his ankle like it was made for him. He secured the small buckle and repeated the process with the left shoe. Standing was a challenge. He gripped the wall for support, wobbling slightly as he found his balance. When he finally looked in the mirror, his breath caught. The shoes transformed his stance, elongating his legs and changing his posture. For a brief moment, he didn't recognize himself. There was a gentle knock at the door. "How are they feeling?" Vivian called. "They fit," Franklin replied, unable to articulate the storm of emotions the sight of his feet in those shoes had unleashed. "May I make a suggestion?" Vivian asked. "I have a dress that would complement those shoes perfectly. Would you like to see it?" Franklin hesitated only briefly before answering. "Yes." A few minutes later, Vivian returned with a cherry red and white polka dot swing dress with a sweetheart neckline and cap sleeves. A white crinoline petticoat accompanied it. "This is from the same era as the shoes, early to mid-50s, she explained, passing them over the door. "The waist is adjustable with the belt, and the cut is forgiving. It should fit your frame nicely." Franklin accepted the garments, his hands caressing the cotton fabric. It felt like crossing a threshold, like stepping into another life, one he'd glimpsed only in dreams and hastily closed browser tabs. Removing his suit was like shedding a skin that had never quite fit. The jacket, the tie, the button-down shirt. Each item represented a concession to expectations he'd never questioned. Standing in just his undershirt and boxers, he felt vulnerable but also lighter somehow. The petticoat went on first, a froth of white that created the iconic silhouette of the era. Then the dress itself, carefully pulled over his head to avoid disturbing his hair. The fabric settled around him, and he fumbled with the side zipper before finally securing it. The belt cinched at his natural waist, creating the illusion of curves where there were none. Franklin turned to face the mirror and froze. The person looking back at him was still recognizable. Same face, same glasses, same brown hair, but transformed. The red dress with its playful white polka dots brought color to his cheeks and life to his eyes. The full skirt floated above the red shoes, which now looked like they were part of a complete, intentional ensemble rather than a curious experiment. "How's it going in there?" Vivian called. Franklin couldn't find his voice immediately. When he did, it came out softer than usual. I don't have words.
May I come in? I've brought a few more things.
Franklin unlocked the dressing room door. Vivian entered, arms full of accessories. Her expression, when she saw Franklin, was one of pure delight. "Oh, darling, you look wonderful! That dress was made for you." She set down her collection on the bench. White gloves, a pearl necklace, and matching earrings, and a small red handbag. "These will complete the look." Franklin slipped on the gloves, which reached midway up his forearms. Vivian fastened the pearl necklace around his neck and helped him with the clip-on earrings. "Now for a little makeup? Nothing dramatic, just enough to enhance your features." Franklin nodded, unable to refuse this woman who seemed to understand him better than he understood himself. With expert hands, Vivian applied a light foundation, a touch of blush, mascara, and a coral lipstick that complemented the red dress. "You have beautiful bone structure," she commented as she worked. "And those eyelashes! Women pay good money for lashes like yours." When she finished, she stepped back, admiring her handiwork. "There's just one thing missing." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bottle. "A touch of perfume. This is from the same era, Chanel No. 5. The scent was floral and sophisticated. As it settled on his skin, Franklin closed his eyes, breathing it in. Something was happening inside him, a recognition, a homecoming. "Look at yourself," Vivian urged gently. Franklin opened his eyes and gazed at his reflection. The person in the mirror was still him, but also someone else, someone who had been waiting patiently to be acknowledged. The brown hair seemed different somehow against the red dress, taking on auburn highlights he'd never noticed before. "Who is she?" Vivian asked softly. "The woman looking back at you?" The question hung in the air for a long moment. Franklin had never allowed himself to consider it, had pushed down every instance of wondering, every moment of longing.
"Amaya,"
he whispered, the name emerging from some deep place he'd kept locked away. "Her name is Amaya." Vivian smiled. "It's lovely to meet you, Amaya." Hearing the name spoken aloud by someone else sent a shiver of recognition through Franklin's body. It felt right in a way nothing had before. "I've never said that out loud," Franklin admitted, voice barely audible. "And now you have. Names have power, you know." Vivian adjusted one of the pearl earrings. "When I chose Vivian, it was like recognizing myself for the first time. Victor was a role I played. Vivian is who I am." Franklin, no, Amaya, touched the fabric of the dress, watching how it moved with her. "I don't know what to do now," she confessed. "What would you like to do?" Vivian asked. "I'd like to walk in these shoes, to see how it feels to move through the world as Amaya." Vivian beamed. "Then, that's what we'll do. The store is closed for another hour. You can practice walking, sitting, all the things that feel different in a dress and heels." For the next 45 minutes, Amaya learned to navigate her new silhouette. Vivian was a patient teacher, showing her how to sit without crushing the crinoline, how to walk with one foot directly in front of the other to maintain balance in heels, how to carry the small handbag in the crook of her arm. "You're a natural," Vivian praised, as Amaya completed a full circuit of the store without wobbling. "Many of my girls take weeks to master walking in heels." "Your girls?" "Other women like us who come here to find themselves. I've become something of a fairy godmother over the years." Vivian straightened a display of hats. This store is a safe haven for those who need space to explore who they really are. Amaya absorbed this information, realizing the encounter wasn't as random as it had seemed. How did you know? About me, I mean. Vivian's eyes twinkled. There's a look, a particular way someone gazes at beautiful things they believe they can't have. I recognized it because I've seen it in my own reflection. She checked her watch. It's nearly 5. The store will be opening again soon. Would you like to change back? The thought of removing the dress and shoes, of stepping back into Franklin's ill-fitting suit, created a physical ache in Amaya's chest. I don't want to go back, she admitted. Then don't, Vivian said simply. The universe brought you here today for a reason. Perhaps it's time for Amaya to step into the world. But my clothes, my wallet. The suit can wait until tomorrow. As for payment, Vivian waved a dismissive hand. Consider this ensemble my gift to you. One woman helping another find her way. Tears welled in Amaya's eyes, smudging the mascara Vivian had so carefully applied. I don't know how to thank you. Live authentically. That's thanks enough. Vivian handed her a tissue. Now let's fix your makeup, and I'll show you a few more essentials you might need. By the time they finished, Amaya had a small collection of basics. Another dress in emerald green, a cardigan, undergarments, and a makeup kit with instructions Vivian had written out. All these items fit neatly into a vintage suitcase Vivian insisted she take. One last thing, Vivian said, disappearing into the back room. She returned with a copper-colored wig styled in a classic bob with soft waves. Your natural hair is lovely, but sometimes a new hairstyle helps solidify the transformation. Amaya removed her glasses while Vivian carefully positioned the wig, tucking away strands of brown hair until they were completely covered. The auburn waves framed her face perfectly, softening her jawline and highlighting her eyes. There, Vivian said, stepping back. Now you truly look like Amaya. When the glasses went back on, Amaya barely recognized herself. The auburn hair changed everything, bringing warmth to her complexion and emphasizing the green flecks in her hazel eyes. It's perfect, she whispered. The bell above the door chimed, signaling the arrival of a customer. Vivian glanced at the clock. And that's our cue. Are you ready? Amaya took a deep breath, straightened her spine as Vivian had taught her, and nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, chin up, small steps, and own every inch of who you are. Vivian squeezed her hand. The world needs more authenticity, not less. Together they walked to the front of the store. The new customer, a woman browsing a rack of vintage coats, barely gave Amaya a second glance. It was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, being seen as the woman she felt herself to be. At the door, Amaya paused. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not brave enough? Vivian adjusted the collar of the red dress. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And you don't have to have all the answers today. Transition, whether social, medical, or both, is a journey, not a destination. Amaya nodded, clutching the vintage suitcase. Will I see you again? Whenever you need me. Timeless Treasures is open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 6. Vivian smiled. And if you need to talk before then, my number is in the makeup kit. With one final deep breath, Amaya pushed open the door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The late afternoon sun warmed her face as she adjusted to the feeling of walking in heels on concrete rather than the shop's carpeted floor. A couple passed by, the man nodding politely in her direction.
"Afternoon, ma'am,"
he said, holding his partner's hand. "Good afternoon," Amaya replied, her voice finding a softer register naturally. The simple exchange, being seen and acknowledged as a woman, sent a thrill through her entire body. She continued down the street, each step more confident than the last. The ruby red heels clicked against the pavement, a percussion accompaniment to the symphony of her transformation. At the corner, Amaya paused, considering her options. Her apartment was 6 blocks away, a manageable distance, but a significant first journey in her new identity. The alternative was hailing a cab, which would mean speaking to the driver, potentially facing questions, or worse. "One step at a time," she murmured to herself, deciding to walk. The physical journey would parallel her internal one, challenging but ultimately rewarding. As she walked, Amaya became increasingly aware of her surroundings, how men's gazes lingered slightly longer, how women assessed her outfit with appreciation or comparison, how she instinctively adjusted her posture when passing groups on the sidewalk. 3 blocks from her apartment, the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds. Amaya quickened her pace as much as the heels would allow, but large raindrops began falling before she could reach shelter. She ducked into a small coffee shop, the same one she'd visited dozens of times as Franklin. The barista, a young woman with purple hair whom Franklin had exchanged pleasantries with many mornings, greeted her with a warm smile. "Nasty weather coming in. What can I get you?" There was no recognition in her eyes, just standard customer service friendliness. Amaya ordered a cappuccino, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Name for the order?" the barista asked, cup and marker poised. "Amaya," she replied, the name still new but increasingly comfortable on her tongue. "Beautiful name," the barista commented, writing it on the cup. "That'll be 450C. Amaya opened the small red handbag, finding the wallet Vivian had thoughtfully transferred from Franklin's suit jacket. As she paid, lightning flashed outside, followed by a dramatic thunderclap. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows. "Looks like you might be here a while," the barista observed, handing over the change. "We've got plenty of seating in the back." Amaya thanked her and found a quiet corner table. She placed the vintage suitcase beside her chair and smoothed her polka dot dress over her knees as she sat, remembering Vivian's instructions about sitting properly in a full skirt. The cappuccino arrived a few minutes later. "Here you go, Amaya," the barista said, placing it on the table. "Let me know if you need anything else." Hearing her name spoken in public, casually, naturally, as if it had always been hers, brought a lump to Amaya's throat. She sipped her coffee, watching the rain through the window and reflecting on the extraordinary turn her day had taken. This morning, she had been Franklin, accountant, cousin's wedding attendee-to-be, unremarkable man living a life of quiet desperation. Now, as evening approached, she was Amaya, a woman taking her first steps into authenticity, wearing a 1950s dress and ruby red heels that matched her newfound confidence. The storm raged on, but inside the coffee shop, a different kind of tempest was settling. Years of confusion, denial, and forced conformity were giving way to clarity. The nagging sense of wrongness that had accompanied Franklin through life, the discomfort in men's clothing, the aversion to his reflection, the disconnect from his own body, was being replaced by Amaya's growing sense of rightness. An hour passed, and still the rain showed no signs of letting up. Amaya ordered another cappuccino, more comfortable now with each interaction. When the barista brought it over, she paused at the table. "I love your whole look," she said, gesturing to Amaya's outfit. "Very vintage glam." "Thank you," Amaya replied, feeling a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "It's my first time wearing it out." "Well, you're rocking it." The barista, her name tag read Zoe, smiled. "The auburn hair really pops with that red dress." After Zoe left, Amaya touched the copper-colored waves of the wig, marveling at how natural it felt already. The color suited her in a way her natural brown never had, bringing warmth to her complexion and highlighting features that had previously seemed unremarkable. Finally, the downpour subsided to a light drizzle. Amaya gathered her things, leaving a generous tip on the table. The walk to her apartment building was damp but uneventful, each step in the ruby heels becoming more natural. The real test came as she approached her building. The doorman, Miguel, had worked there for 5 years and knew Franklin well. Would he recognize her? Should she say something or try to slip past? Before she could decide, Miguel opened the door with his usual professional courtesy.
"Good evening, miss. Nasty weather we're having."
Amaya's heart pounded. "Yes, quite a storm," she replied, stepping into the lobby. Miguel's eyes showed no spark of recognition as he nodded politely and returned to his post. Amaya crossed the marble floor to the elevator, her heels echoing in the spacious lobby. Inside the elevator, she pressed the button for the 7th floor, then caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. The woman looking back at her was poised, elegant in her vintage ensemble, with auburn waves framing a face that seemed softer somehow, more aligned with how she felt inside. The elevator doors opened, and Amaya stepped into the familiar hallway that led to her apartment. Outside her door, she hesitated, suddenly aware of a potential problem. Her keys were in Franklin's jacket pocket, which was still at Vivian's shop. Just as panic began to rise, she remembered the spare key she kept in her wallet for emergencies. With relief, she retrieved it and unlocked the door. Stepping into her apartment as Amaya felt surreal. The space was exactly as Franklin had left it that morning. Dishes in the sink, a half-empty coffee mug on the counter, work papers spread across the dining table. Yet everything looked different through Amaya's eyes, as if she were seeing the space with fresh perspective. She set down the vintage suitcase and made her way to the bedroom. Franklin's clothes hung in the closet, plain shirts, practical suits, uninspired ties. The sight of them created a curious disconnect, like looking at artifacts from someone else's life. Amaya opened the vintage suitcase and carefully removed the emerald green dress Vivian had included. She hung it in the closet alongside Franklin's clothes, the vibrant fabric creating a stark contrast to the sea of navy, gray, and black. Next came the task of removing her makeup. Vivian had included cleansing wipes and had written detailed instructions on proper removal techniques. Amaya followed them carefully, watching as the coral lipstick, mascara, and foundation disappeared, revealing Franklin's features underneath. Yet, even without the makeup, without the dress and heels, something had fundamentally changed. The person looking back from the bathroom mirror wasn't quite Franklin anymore. The awakening that had occurred in Vivian's shop couldn't be undone by simply changing clothes. Amaya carefully removed the auburn wig, placing it on the styrofoam head Vivian had included. Her natural brown hair was flattened from being under the wig, but a quick brush restored some volume. Even so, she missed the warm copper waves immediately. After a long shower, Amaya faced a decision. Franklin's pajamas were in the drawer, practical, masculine flannel. The thought of putting them on created the same discomfort she'd felt for years, but had never been able to name. Instead, she opted for a soft t-shirt and boxer shorts, neutral enough to feel comfortable but not so aggressively masculine as to undo the day's progress. She climbed into bed, physically exhausted, but mentally more alive than she'd felt in years. Sleep came fitfully, dreams filled with ruby red heels and auburn hair, with Vivian's knowing smile and the sound of, "Good afternoon, ma'am," from a passing stranger. When morning light filtered through the blinds, Amaya woke with a clarity that had eluded Franklin for decades. She reached for her phone and called the accounting firm where she worked. "This is Franklin Davis," she said, using her given name for what she somehow knew would be one of the last times. "I'm not feeling well and need to take a sick day." After hanging up, Amaya went to the closet and looked at the emerald green dress hanging beside Franklin's suits. The choice before her wasn't just about what to wear today. It was about who she wanted to be for the rest of her life. With steady hands, she took the dress off its hanger. The decision, she realized, had already been made yesterday when she'd first seen herself reflected in Vivian's vintage shop mirror. All that remained was to embrace it fully. She dressed carefully, following Vivian's instructions about proper undergarments and posture. The emerald green fabric complemented her skin tone beautifully, and though she didn't have shoes as perfect as the ruby red heels, a pair of Franklin's black dress shoes would do until she could expand her wardrobe. The auburn wig was next, positioned with growing confidence. Makeup followed, applied according to Vivian's written tutorial. The result wasn't as polished as what Vivian had achieved, but it was unmistakably feminine, unmistakably Amaya. Her first destination was clear. She needed to return to timeless treasures, to retrieve Franklin's suit, and, more importantly, to thank Vivian for the extraordinary gift she'd given, not just clothes and makeup, but permission to become herself. The morning air was fresh after the previous night's storm as Amaya stepped out of her building. Miguel, the doorman, wished her good morning, again showing no recognition of the resident he'd known for years. On the street, Amaya hailed a cab, giving the driver the address of Vivian's shop. As the taxi navigated the morning traffic, she gazed out the window at a city that suddenly seemed full of possibility. The buildings were the same, the streets unchanged, but her perspective had shifted entirely. Timeless Treasures was just opening when the cab dropped her off. Through the window, Amaya could see Vivian arranging a display, silver hair gleaming in the morning light. She paid the driver and stepped onto the sidewalk, smoothing the emerald dress nervously. The bell chimed as she entered. Vivian looked up, her face breaking into a radiant smile when she recognized her visitor. "Amaya," she said warmly, coming around the counter to embrace her. "You came back." "Of course I did," Amaya replied, returning the hug. "I had to thank you properly, and pick up Franklin's suit." Vivian stepped back, appraising Amaya's appearance with a professional eye. "You did your makeup beautifully, and that shade of green is perfect with your coloring." "I had an excellent teacher," Amaya smiled. "And the wig, it feels right. The auburn color suits me better than my natural brown ever did." "Some things are meant to be." Vivian gestured to a sitting area in the corner of the shop. "Come, sit. Tell me about your evening. How was your first night as yourself?" Over tea served in delicate vintage cups, Amaya recounted her experiences. The walk in the rain, the coffee shop, the doorman who didn't recognize her, and the profound sense of rightness that had only grown stronger overnight. "It's like I've been wearing a mask my whole life without realizing it," she explained. "And now that it's off, I can finally breathe. Vivian nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's exactly how it feels. The relief is almost indescribable, isn't it? What happens now? Amaya asked, setting down her teacup. I took a sick day, but I can't hide forever. There's my job, my family, my entire life as Franklin. The journey is different for everyone, Vivian replied. Some make the change all at once, others gradually. Some seek medical transition, others don't. There's no right or wrong way to be yourself. I think I knew, even as a child, Amaya admitted. There were signs, preferences for certain toys, fascination with my mother's clothes and makeup, but I learned quickly to suppress those interests. Many of us do, Vivian said softly. The world isn't always kind to those who don't fit neatly into its categories, but things are changing, slowly but surely. They talked for nearly 2 hours, Vivian sharing her own transition story, the challenges and victories, the lost relationships and new connections, the process of becoming wholly herself in a world that often resisted such authenticity. I have something for you, Vivian said eventually, rising from her chair. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a small gift bag. A few more essentials to help you on your journey. Inside, Amaya found a delicate gold bracelet, a bottle of the Chanel No. 5 perfume she'd worn yesterday, and a business card for a support group for transgender women. The group meets on Thursday evenings, Vivian explained. Wonderful women, all at different stages of their journeys. They were my lifeline when I first transitioned. Tears welled in Amaya's eyes. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. Live your truth. That's all the thanks I need. Vivian squeezed her hand. And perhaps someday, when you're ready, you can help another woman find her path, just as I've helped you. Before leaving, Amaya purchased several more vintage dresses, a pair of practical low heels for everyday wear, and various accessories to complement her growing wardrobe. Franklin's suit, neatly folded in a bag, seemed like a relic from another lifetime. On the sidewalk outside Timeless Treasures, Amaya paused, considering her next move. The day stretched before her, full of possibilities. She could return to her apartment and continue processing this transformation in private. Or she could step further into the world as Amaya, testing the waters of her new identity in public spaces. The second option terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. With a deep breath, she chose courage over comfort and headed toward the park several blocks away. The sun was high now, the city bustling with lunchtime activity. No one gave her a second glance as she walked confidently in her emerald green dress, auburn hair catching the sunlight. In the park, Amaya found an empty bench overlooking a small pond. She sat, arranging her skirt as Vivian had taught her, and watched ducks skimming across the water's surface. For the first time in memory, she felt present in her body, connected to the moment rather than dissociated and uncomfortable. A small child feeding the ducks nearby looked at her and waved. Amaya waved back, smiling at the simple, human interaction, being seen as she truly was, without judgment or expectation. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be difficult conversations, administrative hurdles, potential rejection from some quarters. But sitting in the sunlight, wearing a dress that matched her eyes, Amaya knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't go back to living as Franklin. And so, with a serene smile gracing her lips and the soft caress of wind on her skin, Amaya turned a new page in her life story. Here, she writes her truth. Footprints marked by ruby red heels dot the fresh beginning, a path forward for a woman making her grand entrance to the world stage, unapologetically herself. Whatever tomorrow brings, she will stride toward it with the same grace and bravery that carried her through this day, ever guided by the red footprints she leaves behind. A new epic begins. The end.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!